Okay. Hello, humans. Welcome to the first DBT video from home. Yay. So, we're going to go ahead and start with distress tolerance skills, and more specifically, crisis survival skills. One thing that I want to point out is that crisis survival skills are used when we want to not make things worse. So very different from some other skills that you learn, very different from other skills that we learn in DBT even. Crisis survival skills you're going to use when you don't want to make things worse. Not necessarily to make things better. A lot of the time people get frustrated and they're like, oh, I did this skill. Why don't I feel better? Why don't I feel happy? Well, yeah, you're not supposed to. You might not feel happy necessarily after using these skills, but did you hurt yourself? Did you hurt someone else? Did you engage in any impulsive behavior right away? Maybe not. And that's all that the skills are intended to do for us. So you might have to use some other things if you want to get to feeling better. Crisis survival skills are just to make it through it. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this skill and we go through the next couple of skills. They are only intended to not make things worse from where you're at. We are all pretty good at making things worse. We take a bad situation and then we do something that made it a whole lot worse. These skills are intended to interrupt that so we don't get to the point where we're spiraling out of control. That's what they're there to do. And as a side effect, sometimes you do genuinely feel better. That's great. But if you don't feel better after doing them, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. That's just how it goes, and you can do other things so that you feel better. So keep that in mind. And I think that's all I probably had to say about distress tolerance skills. So let's get started. Yay! It's going to be a little awkward, but I'm like this in group anyway. You guys are probably used to this. I don't know why I'm concerned. So let's, ironically, start with the stop skill. The handout is in the description below, hopefully. If not, you will hear my lovely voice explaining it right now. Like almost everything in DBT, STOP is an acronym. So S stands for this, T stands for this, O stands for this, etc. Marsha loves acronyms. Can't blame her. Some of them are pretty good and some of them are there. So STOP is an acronym and it's actually an okay acronym. STOP is one of the skills that you're going to want to use in order. So you start with the S, then go to the T, go to the O, and then P. And forgot that train of thought. Oh, it is what it is. I'm not redoing the whole take, so if I randomly lose my train of thought and forget what I'm saying, it's just going to keep going, so get used to that, I guess. Starting with the S at the top. S is for literally stop. Literally stop. Stop what you're doing. Freeze. Hands up in the air. Drop whatever it is that you're holding. Were you supposed to be holding it to begin with? I have some questions. I have some doubts sometimes. Stop what you're doing and freeze. Close your mouth and stop. Just stand there. Sometimes this is enough to get us through some really impulsive decision making. If you can just stop and not do anything, that's a really good place to start. So, stop, freeze. The next letter is T, which is for take a step back. Take a step back. So there's two ways that we take a step back. We can either physically take a step back or mentally take a step back. Physically take a step back is preferred, like leaving the room or stepping outside or just going to a different part of the house. Obviously, there are some times where you can't physically step back. If you are parenting or you're in the car or you're in a meeting, you can't just leave. For those of you that have kids, you probably know this. If you leave, they will find you. So you can't necessarily just leave sometimes. If you can, please do that. Move aside. If you cannot do that, the next best thing is taking a mental step back. So what does that mean? It means getting some distance from your own thoughts, distance from your own things going on in your head, and putting them over there. The way I normally do this or normally visualize it for myself is my thoughts are just this giant, messy storm cloud over there, and I'm standing back here watching them. So I'm literally taking a step back mentally from my thoughts. Takes a little bit of visualization, but some people are really visual people. So if you want to envision your thoughts as a storm cloud or just a giant tangle of awfulness, do it. If that's not your thing, you need something a little bit more concrete, what we can do is think about something else. So count to 10, look around the room, name 5 things that are red, list off as many Disney movies as you can think of. Any thought that's not the thing that's consuming you right now. So physical or mental step back. So from the top, it's you stop, you freeze, you leave the room, you do some mental exercises. That's all it is right now. The O is where things get a little bit more complex. O is for observe. There's multiple types of observing. Those of you that have done the full mindfulness unit, this is a skill that you will recall. One of the main what skills is observe. So if you've done that unit, use those skills. If you haven't, I'm going to explain a little bit right now and do the best that you can, and whatever we end up with is what we end up with. So I probably need some water before I do this. Water, hydrate yourselves, guys. Please. Okay, water. Observe. 2 types of observing as well. There's external observing, things that are outside of myself, and then internal observing, things that are inside myself. Let's start with the external because that tends to be the easier of the 2, and you can all do this. I know you can do this. External observing is open your eyes, look at your surroundings. What's happening right now? What's this trigger in the situation? Is there another person? What are they saying? What are they doing? What do they look like? Where am I? Look around you and observe. Don't do anything, just observe. You can all do that one. Internal observation is the really tricky one, and it's where a lot of people struggle. So if you're trying to do this and, oh, it's not working, I don't know what to do, don't worry about it right now. It's not essential to the skill, but it really does help later down the road. And we'll get more practice when we do the mindfulness skills. So this won't be the first time you've heard about observing. Internal observing is, okay, what are my thoughts? What are my physical sensations? Do my shoulders hurt? Is there a tightness in my chest? Am I balling up my fists, clenching my jaw? And the last one is, what am I feeling and what am I really feeling? This is the hard one. I know we all kind of run away from feelings. We don't like that, but it's valuable information. So what are my feelings? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I hurt? Am I afraid? What's going on in there? And then what am I really feeling? Those of you that have done the emotion regulation unit, we probably understand a lot better about what feelings do. And sometimes we get some tricky feelings that mask themselves as other feelings. So something might come out as anger when really on the inside I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling afraid. It's coming out as anger. We do that a lot. So Observe gives you a chance to say, all right, what feeling is happening right now? Is that really the feeling that's happening right now? Is there something a little bit deeper underneath it? Reason that we do this is it gives us information. So if things are coming out as angry and then I'm trying to do something about the anger, but it's really sadness that I'm feeling, I need to do something about the sadness that's underneath versus the anger that's coming out as. So if you can do both types of those observations, absolutely do it. If you're stuck on just the external observation, that's fine. That is enough. That will get us through this skill. So try both, see what you can do. If you can do parts of it, already doing better. So you stopped, you froze, you left the room for a second, you observed what's going on outside of you, you observed what's going on inside of you. The very last step to the stop skill is proceed mindfully. Sounds fancy, it's really not. So, water. Hydrate, everybody. Yeah. Proceed mindfully. The way that I tend to explain this is in any given situation, we know what the right thing to do is. We know what's going to make us feel better or what's just going to make things worse. If you've stopped, you've taken a break, you've observed for a little bit, by the time you get to the proceed mindfully, you're in a much better headspace to make wise decisions. From Wise Mind, you probably remember learning about it last week or really every week during all of these things. Proceed mindfully. So you know what the right thing to do is, even if we don't like it, even if we want to do something else, by this point, you can make that informed decision. So do that thing. That's what proceed mindfully is. Do that thing that's going to help. That's all it is. So let's go through just a short example of me using the stop skill. So starting at the top, let's say that I'm in an argument, things are getting heated, I'm yelling at people, they're yelling at me, everything's terrible. Whenever it occurs to me, I freeze. Even if it's mid-argument, mid-sentence, doesn't matter where we implement this. Your person that you're arguing with might be like, what? But I don't care. Whatever. If it helps, do it. So, mid-argument, I stop, close my mouth, I freeze. If I'm holding things, I'm putting them down and I am just standing still for at least a few seconds. Some of us really need to stand there for a couple minutes. That's fine too. Just freeze. So I'm mid-argument, I'm frozen. Taking a step back. If I'm mid-argument, this is one of the ones where it's usually helpful to just remove yourself from the situation. So say, hey, I need a minute, I'm gonna go over there. Step into the other room. Now, if your person follows you, then okay, figure out what to do, take a mental step back, do something else. But generally, we can just remove ourselves from the room. So I froze, didn't say anything. I left the room, went over there, gonna stand there for a couple minutes. Then I move on to observing. So observing outside of me. Where am I right now? Okay, I'm in the bedroom. What was just happening? Okay, I got into an argument with my spouse. They looked really angry. They looked really upset at me. It was terrible. Internal. What are my thoughts? My thoughts are, oh no, something's going to happen. They hate me. I did something wrong. What did I do? Everything is awful. This is going to be the end of the relationship. Ugh. Those are my thoughts. Oftentimes are my thoughts. Observing sensations. Okay, I've got tightness in my chest. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm really shaky right now. It tends to happen when we're in arguments. Those are what's going on inside my body. And feelings. What are the feelings? Okay, the feeling on top is probably anger. I'm yelling. I'm screaming at this other person. I'm mad. But underneath that, well, sounds like a lot of fear going on. Fear, did I do something wrong? Did I hurt the other person? Are they mad at me? Do they hate me? That's a lot of anxiety coming up. So really what's happening is I'm feeling anxious and it's coming out as anger, coming out as an argument, but really I'm afraid. That's me observing. And the last step is proceed mindfully. Okay, since I've done this, I know that I'm feeling afraid. I need to do something about that afraid feeling because things aren't going to get better until I can actually address the problem. The problem is I'm scared. What do I do when I'm scared? Okay, well, I hug my squishy toys, I get into some comfy clothes, I talk it out with a friend, I drink some tea, whatever I do when I'm afraid. And lastly, got to get back to the person I was arguing with. Can't just leave it here, can't just, disappear. Proceed mindfully might be coming back about 15 minutes later and saying, look, I got really scared and I started yelling, and that's not what I meant to do. What I was trying to say is, I think that you're mad at me, or something like that. So that's all the steps of stop skill. I froze, I left the room, I observed what was going on, I made a wise decision based on my clear head at that point, and then I chose to go do that thing. So I went back in there, I got my squishy toys, I talked it out, and then things are a whole lot better. You'll notice that after all of this, I might not feel good. You're probably not going to feel good. If you're in a situation where you're using a crisis skill, things are not good by nature. It's literally a crisis. So, But what could have happened if I didn't use the stop skill is the argument would have escalated. Things would have gotten a whole lot worse. I would have said something I regret. They would have said something they regret. Things could have gotten really bad. So by using the stop skill, I removed myself from that situation and reset everything and then tried again. So that is all the stop skill is. Not very complicated, very hard to do in the moment, especially when you guys are first trying it out. So if at this time you're like, oh no, that is way too many steps, I'm not in a crisis, no sir. Okay, take it one letter at a time. Start with the S. If all you can do is just stop and freeze, you're already better off than what you were. If you could do the S and the T, you can just leave the room for a little bit. Already doing better. STO, great. STOP, that's the whole skill. Doing good. So any amount that you can use this skill is enough right now. Do it a bunch of times and eventually you'll be able to do this a lot more easily, especially in the moment. But right now I know it's going to be a struggle. This is a new skill, so give it some time. Give yourself a little bit of leeway to learn the skill and actually try it out. So, water. Refreshing. Okay. Homework. You didn't think you were going to get off that easy from homework. Of course there's homework. It's DBT group, minus the group. Homework is to practice the stop skill. Surprise. You probably could have guessed that one. So practice the stop skill. Right now, I'm pretty sure that almost all of you are going to have a chance to use the stop skill every day. We're all in quarantine. We're all trapped in our house, whether we're trapped alone in our house or we're trapped with family in the house, which is great until it's not great. We're all kind of on edge. You're probably going to have at least one time a day where you're like, oh crap, I could have used the stop skill before I made things a lot worse, before I spiraled out of control, before I did something I didn't want to do. If magically this is the best week in your life, in which case I have some questions, but if this is magically the best week in your life and you're like, oh, I have no opportunity to use the stop skill, what a great week. First of all, good for you, that's weird. But if you find yourself in that situation, don't worry, there's still homework you can do. What I would ask you to do then is imagine a situation that you normally get in that trips you up. So we all kind of have those tendencies to do something impulsive or get trapped in something. You know what they are for you. Imagine that situation and then work through it using the stop skill. So that way even though this is the best week of your life. When that situation comes up again, you're already ready to use the stop skill. You know how to use it. You've practiced it before. So that is the homework. I guess there's no way for us to really discuss it. You can discuss it when I call you for your sessions if you're my client. Otherwise, you can discuss it with your own therapist if you want to do that. So that is the homework. Again, the handout should be there-ish. So you have that. I think that's probably everything I wanted to say right now. I should probably find a way to end these videos a little bit more gracefully, but yeah. So I'm gonna go now. Bye.